One for Olive, one for Popeye, Popeye, and one for Pip-Eye.
Growing up, I enjoyed watching iconic cartoons like Bugs Bunny, Pinocchio, Mickey Mouse, Woody Woodpecker, and Tom from Tom and Jerry. Despite being produced by various studios and having distinct styles, they all had one thing in common: they wear gloves. It's always intrigued me, why do these vastly different characters from various shows all wear gloves? This is the VHS for An Extremely Goofy Movie. That's the name, I'm not describing it, that's the name of the film. It's the follow-up for the cult classic A Goofy Movie, and it's one of my favourite animated films. Now, there's a moment in this movie where even Bobby Zimmerowski, Max's stoner friend from An Extremely Goofy Movie, you know, the one that chugs Cheese Whiz, he says,
"Do you ever wonder why we're always, like, wearing gloves?"
Now that's a damn good question, Bobby. Let's figure this out. When asked this question, John Canemaker, an animation historian and professor at NYU, said, "The most basic theory is that gloves saved time. Animation of any kind, even with computers, is a very work-intensive or labor-intensive process."
Part C. I asked you how they were made.
In the early days of animation, artists had to hand-draw each frame repeatedly. To streamline this labor-intensive process, they developed certain techniques that ultimately influenced the overall style of the cartoons. Felix the Cat, for example, was a very boxy-looking character. As Felix was becoming more popular, the animator, Bill Nolan, decided to remove his snout and make him more circular overall. And that design, what they call the rubber hose and circle design, very spaghetti-like arms of the characters, continued to the design of Mickey Mouse as well. The rubber hose and circle design was a pivotal aesthetic in early animation, enabling quicker drawing of characters' arms, legs, and heads. This style bypassed the need for intricate details like elbows and knees, favouring rounded edges over angles for efficiency. This approach was particularly beneficial in drawing hands, where simplifying the complex shapes of fingers and knuckles was crucial for speed. But hands did pose another problem for animators in the age of fuzzy black and white film. You see, characters in black and white films were difficult to see against their black bodies. Take a look at Mickey Mouse. In 1927's Plain Crazy, he had black hands and feet, just like Felix. He gained shoes by 1928's Steamboat Willie, and in 1929 he was wearing gloves in the Opry House. The rubber hose style of animation is in full effect here. Every character is exaggerated, round, and simple. And like many of the glove-wearing cartoon characters of his time, Mickey Mouse is a non-human doing very human things. In his 1968 biography, The Disney Version, Walt Disney addressed this very issue. He says, "We didn't want him to have mouse hands because he was supposed to be more human, so we gave him gloves." So in addition to saving time and providing colour contrast, gloves bring non-human things to life, making their grand gestures stand out a little more. These 1935 tea kettles from Van Buren Studio have them. This movie camera does too. When Pinocchio is a puppet, he wears gloves, but when he becomes a boy, they disappear. They're no longer needed. But there's another, less practical influence behind cartoon characters' white gloves. The Opry House is a film about Mickey putting on a big vaudeville show. That film and many of the animations that predated it were inextricably linked to vaudeville performance and the blackface minstrel shows of the time. In fact, early animators often performed on vaudeville stages. Nicholas Salmond writes in Birth of an Industry that early animated characters like Felix the Cat, Bimbo, Bosco, and Mickey Mouse weren't just like minstrels, they were minstrels. Both the cartoons and the stage characters were portrayed as mischievous and rebellious, yet good-natured. They wore loose clothes, had painted faces, and they wore white gloves. In the 1930s, vaudeville and the blackface minstrelsy declined. White gloves were no longer associated with vaudeville to a new generation of viewers. Instead, they were just part of the cartoon style people came to expect. In the band concert, there's this scene where Clarabelle Cow, playing the flute, gets her glove stuck inside the instrument, showing how odd the character looks without the glove. 60 years later, Goofy takes off his gloves before getting in a pool, and it's quite frankly, really disturbing. Now, what's really bothering me is why Daffy Duck and many other animated birds don't wear gloves. We might never know.
Look, let's not split hairs. Why do you even wear gloves? Because I've always worn them. It's who I am. Why do you wear that thing around your neck?
Well played, Bugs Bunny. Well played. Oh, and if you got to the end of the video, you might as well subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.